The Guardian newspaper, based on an investigation by Greenpeace UK, reported last week that leading European agribusiness groups using a manifesto called the Dublin Declaration have been lobbying senior EU officials against recommendations for reduced meat consumption in the bloc's cancer strategy, in their sustainability policies and in their climate goals. The Dublin Declaration of Scientists on the Societal Role of Livestock launched at Teagasc in October last year. It's a relatively short document that argues for the nutritional, environmental and social benefits of meat eating. But the document, which presents itself as a declaration of scientists, was in fact written by a cabal of lobbyists with close ties to the livestock industry. The declaration's launch in Dublin was hosted, as I said, by Teagasc. The agency received 75% of its funding from the Irish and the EU government. Helped pay for the event, they contributed €39,000 of the event's €45,000 cost, mainly in the form of travel, accommodation and support for the speakers who attended. To get a sense of the scale of the involvement of the livestock industry in this event and how far from an objective event it was, a scientific objective document it was, the networking event at the conference was sponsored by two industry groups, the American Meat Science Association and the North American Meat Institute. The Dublin Declaration was the centrepiece of an edition of the peer-reviewed journal Animal Frontiers, and in November 2022 the EU's leading agri-food groups wrote to the EU Commissioner on Agriculture using the Dublin Declaration to argue against a plan to end public funding for the promotion of red and processed meats. In January 2023, a delegation for the declaration travelled to Warsaw to present their findings at an event organised by the Polish Beef Association and attended by the Commissioner. The lead author of the declaration is Mr. Pierre Ederer. He is a former McKinsey consultant who works closely with agribusiness and whose clients include McDonald's and the US meat producer Smithfield. He has described veganism as an eating disorder requiring psychological treatment. Dr. Colette Castor, Chief Executive of the American Meat Science Association, which is funded by major meat producers such as Cargill, Smithfield and Tyson. The second lead author, Frederick Leroy, is a food science academic in Brussels, but also president of the Belgian Association for Meat Science and Technology. He's a regular presence on the meat industry conference circuit and the author of Aleph 2020, an academic-led initiative in support of meat production. And finally, Dr. Rod Polkinghorne, who is a self-described pioneer of the Australian feedlot industry and who works with meat industry actors. Minister, a state agency in Ireland has been made an utter fool of by industry lobbyists intent on their selfish pursuit of ever-increasing global climate emissions in the name of profit. Teagasc is lending its funding and its credibility to a campaign that is undermining efforts to tackle climate change and to take science seriously within the EU. Ireland has the second highest emissions per capita in Europe, and that is driven in large part by our export-oriented agriculture model, not what we are eating ourselves, what we export based in beef and dairy products. Most lobbyists pay the state for access and for consideration, but Ireland must be in a unique position of paying those same lobbyists $39,000 for the privilege of being manipulated and hoodwinked by an unethical and anti-science industry operative. Teagasc was founded as a research and industry development body. And I have to say, if we can't rely on the data and scientific objectivity of Teagasc, where does that leave us?
Thank you, Deputy Minister. On behalf of the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Charlie McConalogue, TD, I would like to thank Deputy Hurricane for her contribution on Teagasc's role in the Dublin Declaration of Scientists on the societal role of meat. Teagasc was established under the Agricultural Research Training and Advice Act 1988 as the national agency with responsibility for the provision of research, training, advisory services to the agricultural food industry. Teagasc seeks to be professional, independent and scientifically excellent in carrying out its functions. It works in partnership with other organisations and stakeholders across the agri-food sector and actively collaborates with research organisations across the world, from individual projects and publications right up to formal alliances and partnerships. The organisation's overarching strategic goal is to make sustainability front and the centre of all Teagasc activities and to provide a scientific leadership leadership and support to Irish farmers and food companies in achieving a sustainable food system. Teagasc has an important role to play in supporting government strategy for the development of the agriculture and food industries within the framework of government EU policies and priorities. It provides research and training advice in supporting viable and resilient primary producers to enhance the production of safe, nutritious food from animals with high animal welfare status from the soils with high health status. Equally, I would emphasise that Teagasc research programmes are very much concerned with addressing the broad environmental sustainability challenges in relation to climate change, water quality, ammonia emissions and biodiversity. Teagasc is marshalling its resources to support the agricultural industry to respond to climate challenge. The Climate Action Strategy 2022 to 2030, Supporting Farmers for Climate Action, sets out an ambitious roadmap to 2030 that will maximise farmer uptake of the existing marginal abatement cost curve technologies through Teagasc advisory and education activities. Teagasc routinely holds international scientific conferences to bring together the latest science available on a particular topic and to facilitate discussions around the science. The outputs from these conferences are published for the public to read and evaluate the outcomes. Last October, 12 months, Teagasc hosted an international summit on the societal role of meat at the Teagasc Food Research Centre in Ashtown. It brought together world-leading experts on the role of livestock farming and meat in diet and health, society, economics and culture and sustainable environment. The agenda included presentations by experts from leading research institutions and universities from across the globe. Teagasc has advised that she did not host the Dublin Declaration of Scientists on the societal role of meat. Conclusions from the summit and evidence reviewed in the summit featured in a peer-reviewed edition of the scientific journal Animal Frontiers in early 2023. Summit attendees with academic and scientific credentials were invited to endorse the evidence base by signing the Dublin Declaration. No companies or organisation could sign the declaration, and individuals who signed had to be scientists working in the relevant areas. Teagasc Research and Knowledge Transfer Services engaged in the joint programmes with various food companies. Industry involvement is clearly visible to all parties, and the outputs of these initiatives are communicated in the public domain. Teagasc has contracts in place to ensure that third parties will not have any influence over their publication or output. For example, the Teagasc Signpost programme demonstrating best practice in reducing greenhouse gas emissions on their farms is supported by over 60 companies and organisations, all of whom are committed to reducing GHG emissions from the agri-sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Harrigan.
Thank you, Minister. It seems from that statement there that Teagasc is now disavowing the Dublin Declaration, which is interesting. Of course, nobody, and certainly not myself, has suggested that the people involved in the declaration were not scientists, only that they are scientists who are fatally compromised. In fact, the conflicts of interest that I have read into the record in my initial statement are from Teagasc's own briefing document, which was accessed by Greenpeace through a Freedom of Information request. So it seems obvious to me, at least, and certainly to Greenpeace and the Guardian newspaper, that Teagasc is well aware that there is a conflict of interest issue here. I would like to read what Mr. Ederer, the chief author of the declaration, said himself, because I think where Teagasc has found themselves compromised here, they have also managed to involve ministers in that measure of being compromised. He wrote, the Dublin Summit and the Dublin Declaration was the first piece of utilisable science that they have received in all their 4 years of Commission work, and that we need high-ranking politicians at these launch events. What started the coverage in Ireland is not the brilliance of our science, but the fact that we had a minister and a commissioner there. Now, I don't actually know what that means, but as a legislator and somebody who is very proud to be a representative in Ireland and is very proud of our belief in science and our belief in trust and data, I think we should find that out. And I think we need to hold Teagasc to account for involving our ministers in that.
Thank you, Deputy. And I do want to reiterate just again that Teagasc has advised that it did not host the Dublin Declaration of Scientists on the societal role of meat. Conclusions from the summit on societal role was hosted, but the conclusions of the summit, as evidence reviewed in the summit, featured in a peer-reviewed edition of a scientific journal, Animal Frontiers, in early 2023. And summit attendees with academic or scientific were invited to endorse the evidence, and I said no companies were involved in that, and it was up to those people after the summit, those who wanted to put their name to it. But that process of putting that declaration together and the hosting of that in the Animal Journal Frontiers was not hosted by Teagasc. But I do agree completely that Teagasc did hold the international summit, from which those conclusions emerged after the course of the summit. And it was attended, as you said, by Minister of State from the Department of Agriculture and Minister of State Martin Hayden from this area. And the Dublin Declaration does deal with issues in relation to challenges for livestock and human health, livestock and the environment, livestock and socio-economics, and outlook for livestock. And as you did indicate earlier, Teagasc did actually host it at, I think the cost of the function was approximately €40,000 or thereabouts. But the summit, or the declaration, emerged subsequently from the summit. It wasn't overseen by Teagasc at the particular event. But I take on board all the points you've made, and they've assured me that Teagasc ensures, as a state agency, that they have no conflict of interest when it comes to these matters. That's a matter I'm sure different people will have different views on, but that's their stated position. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The fourth item selected.